I don't think he's going to get much joy.
Splitting opinion, it's fair to say.
It will be down to who fancies having a go, I think.
I don't know what else you possibly want.
I actually think there's one thing that Spurs will target in this, the triple M threat for Man United.
Manchester United need to start the winning run again.
The Spurs have got a lot of threats on that field, and they've also got a couple of players with a point to prove.
Manchester United go to Tottenham Hotspur, looking to make it 5 unbeaten games in a row for the first time in a very long time. Tottenham struggling at home this season, just one win in the Premier League since the opening day victory against Burnley, but it promises to be an intriguing tactical encounter. And luckily, we are here in the Tactics Exposed Team Talk studio. I'm Will Pugh, that's Sun Sports tactical guru Dean Scoggins. Dino, you somehow wangled it that we get to cover Tottenham again on this show.
Man United, isn't it? It's Man United.
Well, we're obviously going to do a bit of both as usual, but we'll be answering questions from you guys on this game. Looking forward to it, Dean?
Yeah, I'm going. You mentioned Tottenham's poor home form there, so I'm sort of looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the day out. Let's hope it's a bit more exciting than it has been recently.
Absolutely. Well, you beat Copenhagen 4-0 in Europe.
Yeah, that was lovely.
I don't know what else you possibly want. Right, let's go to question number one. Will Ruben Amorim stick with Benjamin Sesko up front? He did play, or he did start at Forest. He's been playing a little bit more recently. Got a bit of stick from Gary Neville not too long ago. Splitting opinion, it's fair to say.
Yeah, there's even comparisons with Rasmus Højlund, which I think is very unfair. I mean,
who?
No, on Sesko, definitely.
Right.
Like, he's definitely an upgrade on Højlund. Yeah, it's a very good question, actually. And I actually think that, no, he won't stick with Sesko. He played really well against Brighton at Old Trafford. And I think that the physicality thing against Nottingham Forest was played into it as well. But I think it should be the triple M threat for Man United, and that's Mason, Matheus, and Mbeumo, isn't it?
Lovely,
as the front three. So, and look, here's why. Let's go straight to the board. So Tottenham will come back to their formation in a minute, but you think you're going to see Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero in there, right? And I think if Benjamin Sesko plays in there against those two, plus what is a very deep-lying two in the Thomas Frank formation of Bentancur and Palhinha, most likely as the holders in that midfield, I don't think he's going to get much joy in that position. I think that, physically, Mickey van der Ven and Romero are as good as anybody in the league. They're going to mop things up in the air. And also, they like to hold their line under Thomas Frank. It's not Ange ball where it's up and back, up and back. They hold their line, whether it's a mid-block or a deep line. And so that's going to be difficult for Sesko, okay? What I'd like to see, as I said there, I'd like to see Man United not do anything in this game. But from a Man United point of view, and remember I stay as level-headed as possible, I think they should have Mason Mount back in here, and that means Cunha goes in there and Mbeumo goes in there. And that's because of the combinations with the wing-backs and out wide. And let's move Casemiro and Bruno back up into that position. And I've talked about it before. I mentioned Ange there. We had a Wheels of Chaos episode out wide, right, where there's an interchange, and we had it with a spinning plates of Arsenal where they all move in positions.
Yep.
If you imagine it where Benjamin Sesko very much holds the line here, and sort of jockeys between the centre-backs to receive the ball into feet, okay? That square there would naturally be his area of movement.
Correct.
If you play a much more mobile and much more movement from Matheus Cunha in there, you can end up in this position where you've got three attacking players, your wing-back, whether that's Dorgu or Dalot, and those two, and they can interchange. So if then Mason Mount, who's very clever movement, goes inside, you'll see Cunha come over here. Those two can swap around. You will obviously see Bruno join that as well. And then that triangle of three becomes a much more fluid and flexible. And then we go over to the other side.
Mate, just before you move over there, when you sort of call it a triangle, there's four. Are you including the sort of fullback in that?
Yeah, you're including the wing back, yeah. So if Bruno mops over to this side of the field, you'll see Casemiro stay in, and you've still got that attacking three to overload on that side.
Yep.
But if it's, as I say, if it's Sesko and he ends up wanting a cross And so for as a striker, naturally drifting onto the back centre-back, you end up in this position where Spurs are probably overloading 3v2 on this side, whereas a much more mobile Cunha does it there. And then on the other side, let's say Amad Diallo really hugs out, Bryan Mbeumo comes into a pocket position, you might get Cunha come in here and again try and create that overload over that side. So I think it's a much more flexible front three that obviously can become a front four, and then Bruno Fernandes can join that attack and become a front five as well. So I think it just makes them much more mobile, much more, an attacking sense, and also they're away from home. So if Spurs squeeze up and Spurs are pressing the game high up the field, those three are much more of a threat over the top as well.
Well, that was my next question, Dino. While I'm sure you want Tom Heaton to play up front, I don't think Amorim is going to do that. But Liverpool away, obviously spectacular performance by Manchester United. First win at Anfield in a decade. I think in that game, the most interesting part of the review show we did afterwards on Tactics Exposed, every Monday, by the way, and we'll be reacting to this game on Monday, so make sure you head over to Sun Sports YouTube and subscribe to get that episode if you don't already. But in that game, Dino, very much the most intriguing part of it from my point of view was Senny Lammens, loads and loads of long passes. We showed his pass map after that game. And just but not challenging for the balls, almost just sitting off and waiting for it to come. Would that same thing apply in this game?
It would, because if Spurs at times, and it'll be interesting to see what they do, but at times this season have been very, very brave on the press, and they'll move right up the field. They did it against PSG in the Super Cup at the start of the season as well. And that means if Lammens does go long, and then you end up in sort of that position there, and the Tottenham centre-backs win the ball, which you'd expect them to do, as I say, if Sesko doesn't play, even more so you'd expect them to win there. But that's where that buzzing around, position comes. And Mbeumo, Cunha, Mount, and then including Amad Diallo and Bruno Fernandes in that, will be hounding that second ball. So, yeah, I think you're spot on. They'll look in a game where you are away from home against a team like Tottenham, who will probably try and dominate possession. And again, we did it, as we talked about with United already before, they've been quite good out of possession as opposed to in possession. They've been much more comfortable off the ball this season. And yeah, I just think that that's a more mobile front three. And quite frankly, with my Tottenham hat on, I fancy Mickey van der Ven versus Sesko much more than I fancy Mickey van der Ven against Cunha.
Yeah, especially if Cunha's not even challenging for the ball.
Exactly,
just going,
yeah. He wants it to feet, and then he's more tricky, yeah.
Well, see, look, Dino, I like to show off every now and then. I do listen to what
you're learning as we go, right?
Exactly, yeah. Right, let's move on then to question number 2. Will this be a boring Europa League final rerun? One of the worst finals in living history. You were out there in Bilbao.
Could not be further from the truth. It was the greatest night in football history. I know why the question's been asked, and it
was boring.
It was pragmatic Ange ball for the only time really, or for in Europe anyway last year, to give him some credit. But look, it got Spurs the result on the day. But I know full well why the question's been asked. But I think both teams are a long way different from where they were in May. Right. And that, obviously changing manager for Spurs and just a change in attitude and an approach for Manchester United. And just to recap one thing about the setup, obviously it's the same formation from Amorim, right? Obviously. But in the Europa League final, what we did as the review show after that, when I was a little bleary-eyed and had a little headache, was that Man United were getting dragged around the field in the defensive position. So if you remember, I remember it very well, Brennan Johnson's goal, there was the space between Harry Maguire and Lenny Yoro, which was like that. Yep. And Spurs then got into a position where they were crossing the ball into this area here, and then obviously Johnson got in, and he got in that position there. So United have been much better this season. They're compact. They know where each other are. It's about distance control, okay? So when you drop into a mid-block or a low-block position, those positions between all these players are very tight and very similar. So then if, by chance, your centre-back does get dragged over into that position, you've got a very easy cover man there and a very easy cover man there. And then your distances are the same. So United have managed to do that this season much, much better. De Ligt didn't play in the Europa League final. It was Maguire, Yoro. He's been excellent this season, so there's a big change there. Bruno and Casemiro the same, but obviously I've already mentioned the front three, so Mbeumo and Cunha, they weren't in the boring Europa League final, and the very frustrating Alejandro Garnacho also is not involved in this as well. So from that perspective, no, I don't think it will be. And then from the flip side, from Tottenham, Thomas Frank has struggled at home. Tottenham have struggled at home to break teams down. They've struggled to be quick in possession, and that's where the pressure is going to be on this man here, Kolo Muani and Xavi Simons. And those two, again, weren't involved in the Europa League final. But I don't expect Spurs to come out and play with a let's swamp midfield against United and try and kill the game. The crowd at the Tottenham Stadium is not going to stand for that at the moment. So I actually think Spurs might have a good go at the beginning in this, which, as we mentioned with the United front three, could mean we get space in here for the front three to counter-attack. We'll see the Tottenham centre-backs with a lot of the ball. I think we're going to see Bentancur and Xavi Simons play much further up. And the key man for me for Tottenham is Destiny Udogie, because without him, Spurs' attack is nowhere near as good as what it is when he doesn't play.
What do Manchester United have to worry about in Tottenham's attack then? How do you think they'll set up I know you've kind of outlined it there defensively, but what do you think they'll be worried about?
Well, they'll be very much hoping that Mohamed Kudus doesn't play. And I know you're not a fan of his, but quite frankly, that if it's not Kudus, then the drop off for Spurs there is quite large. Johnson, Odobert, Tell, just not of the level of Mohamed Kudus, right? So he was injured in the midweek game, so they'll be hoping that the fitness test. Spurs will be hoping that the fitness test goes well. So there is that, and Kolo Muani is getting fit. And, it's taken a long time. We're in November and we haven't seen him play 90 minutes yet. But in the Champions League game in the week, even in the Premier League game against Chelsea, where Spurs were very poor, he still looked lively, and he's a big physical presence. And I think that where we talked about the Manchester United front three, what the Man United back three have got to be worried about is the mobility of that Tottenham front three. Right. So, they will get around the place. They will find Kolo Muani chasing balls over here, and then whether it's Odobert, Tell, or even Richarlison playing off that left-hand side, he might be in here. You'll see Kudus in this position here. You'll see Xavi Simons move over here, and you'll see Pedro Porro in the pocket trying to cross the ball into those areas. So that's what they've got to be worried about. And look, these two are really evenly matched, I think. And I think it will be down to who fancies having a go, I think, in the game.
We'll move on to point number 3, Dino. Do you expect Manchester United to have less of the ball, just quickly?
Yeah, I think they'll try and let Tottenham have possession, and where Tottenham have struggled is where they've ended up with Van de Ven, Romero or Danzo, because Danzo's played the last couple of games with Romero injured, and then league games anyway. And then you've got Palhinha and Bentancur. Bentancur should be the ball player, and he's way off form and has struggled. So what United will try and do is that, so that they've got the block in there, and they'll just say, go on, you can have it. You can have it in those four, and then how are you going to get the ball to the players that are going to hurt you? Whether that's Odobert or Kudus wide, or whether that's Xavi Simons in there, create that traffic jam and block those passing lanes to those attacking players.
Yep, fair enough, mate. Right, let's move on to question number 3. Will Tottenham play 3-5-2 like Amorim? Now, you've set them up 4 at the back there, Dino. You suggested, I think it was last week, ahead of the Tottenham game, that Thomas Frank may go to a 5 at the back or a 3-5-2, whichever way you want to look at it. What are you thinking for this game?
Do you know, and I know a few people will be shouting that, Amorim doesn't play 3-5-2, but I think whoever's submitted this is quite clever, because they have been forming in that shape in attack. So I get where it's coming from, because Mbeumo's been moving up into the front and then they've been flexible around. I think Spurs won't match them up in this game. I think that there'll be a temptation to do it. For those of you who didn't watch the Super Cup, that's what they did against PSG. I think a lot of that was obviously down to being 5 at the back against PSG's wide men. But also, if you're playing against a team who's played 3 at the back every week, and Amorim, we know how long it's taken Amorim to get them into that. I don't think Spurs will do it. But I'll show you why. I mean, if they did do it, okay, there's one player in particular who might benefit. Mickey van der Ven.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sure everyone now has watched the goal. I mean, I've watched it a few times, I've got to be honest.
Against Copenhagen.
Yep. Which, I mean, if Son won the goal, won the Puskás Award for his goal against Burnley, then Mickey van der Ven's got to be close, right? But what that means then is that if you've got that shape, and let's move Man United up a bit, and then they press the ball into an area like this, if you can switch the ball, Mickey van der Ven's got the room to run. And Old Trafford away last season, where Mickey van der Ven absolutely charged through this area, nobody stopped him, crossed the ball for Johnson to score, okay? So there is a benefit to playing three at the back. And on the other side, let's say that Danzo is the centre of the three, or even Palhinha is the centre of the three. That means that Christian Romero is here, and he is the ball player. He is the best passer of the ball for Spurs. They've really missed him in an attacking sense, and that's where he may be the one to find the pass into midfield to Bentancur or into Xavi Simons. So there is a benefit to Spurs doing it, but I just don't think they've played it enough to warrant doing it in this game. What I think is more likely will happen is that they'll start as a four, where Pedro Porro, Romero, Van der Ven and Destiny Udogie are there, but they'll become three if Destiny Udogie plays again, where Porro in the midweek game against Copenhagen in the last match, he didn't really go very far up, and then Destiny Udogie became the left 10, like an inverted fullback, and Xavi Simons played as the right 10, so they ended up in that 3-2-5 attacking shape we talk about quite a lot. And that meant Xavi Simons had much more flexibility to move around the field and go and collect the ball from these midfield players, and it looked much more settled for Spurs. So I don't think they'll go 3-5-2, but I think that you will see them in a back three shape quite a lot. The other thing that I think, if you play a 3-5-2, there's a potential that Richarlison and Mawani could play up front together, depending on Kudus' fitness. But I actually think there's one thing that Spurs will target in this, and I wouldn't at all be surprised, given that Destiny Udogie is my favourite Tottenham player from a sense that we're a different team when he plays. I love Jed Spence, great defender, but he doesn't attack like Destiny Udogie does and give us the balance that Destiny Udogie does. If Udogie is back, then I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Richarlison play as the left winger. Now, that might surprise a few people, but if you imagine you've got Xavi Simons here, Kudus here, and then a man who delivers a really, really good cross in Pedro Porro in this position, Richarlison could target Lenny Yoro and Amad Diallo at the back post. They struggled against Nottingham Forest in the air with the balls over the top into that area. So that could be one that maybe doesn't start in that position, Richarlison. It might be Odobert or Tell or maybe even Brennan Johnson as well. But that might be one where Richarlison comes on and provides a real threat at the back post.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, Dino. And look, don't forget, with Betfair's Safe Sub, your bet is not over yet. If the player that you have backed gets subbed off, because it rolls on to the player coming on. So, for example, if Thomas Frank starts Jed Spence, you've backed him to get a card at any point in the game, and he comes off without that having happened, and then Destiny Udogie comes on and then gets booked, you still get paid out. Dino, are you confident in your Tottenham team's ability to take on this very, very in-form Manchester United side, who have sort of shown a knack of doing well away from home, albeit they only drew away at Nottingham Forest last time?
Have you ever seen me confident about Tottenham ever?
Quietly.
No, I'm not confident actually. I think that Spurs will have to play a lot better than they've been playing in recent weeks to match this United team. I think the word you mentioned there is confidence, and United look settled and they look confident and knowing now what they're trying at least to do. But Spurs have got a lot of threats on that field, and they've also got a couple of players with a point to prove. So game on.
And don't forget, of course, Dino, that Manchester United need to start the winning run again, so Frank from the United Strand has half a chance of cutting all his hair off.
Yeah, well, the way Spurs have played the last few weeks, I was going to say I'll cut all my hair off if we play 5 passes forwards, but let alone 5 wins.